Ages to 1485, the age of setting moral standards. This age can be referred to as the age of setting moral standards because authors began to write about things that they thought were acceptable in society and about things that they thought were not acceptable in society. They began to draw the line between good and evil. The Middle Ages began around 750 and ended around 1485. Julius Caesar conquered Great Britain in 55 BC, and it remained part of the Roman Empire for roughly a century. Remnants of the province of Britain were conquered by the Anglo-Saxons, and by 650, the Anglo-Saxons owned Britain. The Anglo-Saxons were comprised of three groups: the Anglos, Saxons, and Jutes. The Anglo-Saxons recognized two social classes: the Earls, who were considered the ruling class, and the Churls, who were considered the subject class. The Anglo-Saxons began writing their own literature after Pope Greg the Great started the spread of Christianity in Britain. After the spread of Christianity, schools began teaching scriptures along with classical writings in Greek and Latin. The Anglo-Saxons then began to write their own literature. In 850, Alfred the Great, who was considered the most important Anglo-Saxon king, gave the Vikings north and central portion of Britain. Later, those sections were won back by the Anglo-Saxons. The Middle Ages contained literature that portrayed a sense of fear and a sense of mystery. During this time, literature was presented orally, allowing the speaker to change the story in order to get better reactions from the audience, or in order to show the audience what was acceptable in society. Literature during the Middle Ages was a product of pagan and Christian culture. Old literature was a product of pagan and Christian culture. This gave Old English poems a sort of tension. English writers infused Christian worldviews with heroic values they inherited. They modified the worldview of traditional epics with Christian reflections on the transience of world glory. Heroism is a main theme displayed in Middle Age literature. Let's take a look at Beowulf. The main character is a hero who slays a mysterious beast named Grendel, Grendel's mother, and a vicious dragon in order to save the lives of innocent people. As it is said in the text, Beowulf is awarded many more valuables for his bravery, but most importantly, Hrothgar teaches Beowulf what it means to be a good king and to respect life. Before the Geats return home, Hrothgar proclaims Beowulf fit to be king of the Geats. Eventually, Beowulf dies in battle while fighting a dragon to protect his kingdom.
First watch, you guys can go to bed. What about Grendel? Don't worry about it. I'll get him. All right.
Now let's look at Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Sir Gawain volunteers to fight a Green Knight in King Arthur's place, clearly displaying heroism. He does not back down, even though he believes he may not win. This account is displayed clearly in the text. "Give me here thine axe, and I shall grant thee the boon thou hast asked." Lightly he sprang to him and caught at his hand, and the knight, fierce of aspect, lighted down from his charger. Then Arthur took the axe and gripped the haft and swung it round, ready to strike. Then Gawain, who sat by the queen, leaned forward to the king and spake, "I beseech ye, my lord, let this venture be mine." Now let's talk about the Dream of the Rood. The literary work tells the story of the cross that Jesus was killed upon. The cross has no choice but to hold him up, even though the cross does not want him to be killed. The cross feels obligated to hold up Jesus, trusting that everything will be okay in the end. Holding up the Lord as he dies was not an easy task, but in the end, the cross becomes the symbol of a hero, a symbol of happiness and strength. The following lines describe how heroic the cross was despite the pain it went through. "They pierced me through with darksome nails. On me the scars are manifest, the open, woeful wounds. Yet dared I not work harm to any one of them. They mocked us both together." The early modern period, also called the Age of Self-Expression. This age can be referred to as the age of self-expression because authors began expressing their own thoughts and feelings regardless of what society thought. The Middle Age outlook on life disintegrated as individuals aspired to shape their own destinies. Commerce and industry greatly expanded and capitalism replaced older organization. The central government also grew stronger. There was a large rise of Protestantism, which fragmented Christendom. The middle class began to play a more important role in society, contributing more to economic and cultural life. During this period, artists tried to apply the ancient learning and standards of Greece and Rome to modern teaching. Writers and artists also sought to imitate classic style and capture secular spirit in their work. Full development of an individual's talent was highly valued and brought about new life possibilities. The Renaissance began in Italy during the 14th century. Feudal values of birth, military prowess, and a fixed hierarchy were replaced with self-achievement. Art was a way of obtaining honor and reputation during the Renaissance. Humanism became a popular educational and cultural program. It was a program based on the study of ancient Greek and Roman literature. Humanism taught individuals that they could shape their own future and therefore they could also shape history. Art and literature during the time stressed proportion, balance, and harmony, whereas medieval art served a religious purpose. Protestant Reformation was the start of a rebellion against the Church's authority. The Church had gained too much power and was no longer focused on holiness. It had become corrupt. King Henry VIII initiated Reformation when the Pope refused to marry him to the woman that he loved. Artists and writers began creating works that expressed self-achievement. Art itself was a way of gaining honor through one's own efforts. This was also a time where individuals were not afraid to express how they felt about things. King Henry VIII initiated Reformation. Society decided to change the structure of government. Individuals began choosing whether they would look at life from a strictly Christian outlook or if they would look at life with a more secular viewpoint. And individuals stood up to the church when the church became corrupt. Change was a common theme expressed in literature during this period. Let's start by reviewing A Midsummer Night's Dream by William Shakespeare. Throughout the play, the common theme of change is expressed through almost every character. Theseus is a good example of this. At the beginning of the play, Theseus decides that Hermia has to follow her father's orders and marry Demetrius, even though she loves Lysander. However, at the end of the play, Theseus changes his mind and allows Hermia to marry Lysander. In fact, all of the characters display the common theme of change. When the four lovers, Hermia, Lysander, Demetrius, and Helena, become lost in the woods, they constantly fight and argue due to the use of the love potion by Oberon. After Oberon reverses the effects of the love potion, the four lovers become happy and there is no more conflict. The moon is also symbolic of change in the play. Now let's review The Tragical History of Dr. Faustus by Charles Marlowe. Dr. Faustus displays the change from a strictly Christian outlook on life to a secular outlook on life. At the beginning of the story, Dr. Faustus states, "Is to dispute well logic's chiefest end? Affords this art no greater miracle? Then read no more, thou hast attained that end. A greater subject fitteth Faustus's wit." From this point on, Faustus takes up dark magic and sells his soul to the devil, ditching God in order to have a better life. Faustus is enjoying his new life, but the good angel tries to sway him back to Christian views. However, Faustus denies the angel and eventually ends up in hell for the rest of his life and is very unhappy. Now let's review The Flea by John Donne. The flea represents change in a slightly different way. The flea represents the change in the view of how women should behave. During medieval times, women gained power according to how sexually active they were, but during the Renaissance, women were expected to remain constant. They were shunned if they were not true to their man. In The Flea, a man tries to convince a woman to have sex with him even though they are not married. He compares the act to a flea biting him, saying, And in this flea our two bloods mingled be. Thou knowest that this cannot be said, a sin nor shame, no loss of maidenhead. Yet this enjoys before it woo, and pampered swells with one blood made of two, and this, alas, is more than we would do. The woman stays true, however, and kills the flea, a metaphor for killing the man's hopes.
Hey, baby. Wanna hold hands?
I
You
don't
ever held hands before?
I
Hands
know.
is fun.
I don't know.
Hold hands.
I'm uncertain.
Come on, let's hold my hand.
I don't know. Stop.
How dare you reject my advance